Over the last 5 years, I've built about 45 pounds of muscle, and what we're gonna do in this video is go over lessons that I've learned so you can make this happen for yourself. Let's begin. So the first thing you have to understand is that you're not motivated because you're probably suppressing it. One of the main problems you'll face as you're trying to build muscle is a lack of motivation to keep training or bulking, and there's multiple reasons why this can happen, but one of them is because you're suppressing that feeling of motivation through other behaviors. Let me explain. Our mind has a multitude of needs that it wants to fulfill, and in order for each of these needs to be met, our body has to take a specific set of actions. Now, in order for our body to take these actions, it has to be motivated to take action, and this is what our mind does. It sends emotions to our body for it to take a specific action in order to fulfill a need it has. So these needs your mind has and these emotions it's sending to your body are what we could call motivators because they motivate your body to act in a certain way. So now you might be asking, okay, well, what kind of needs does our mind has? And to have a bit of an idea, you can look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some of our needs include a need for status, achievement, love, connection, food, shelter, safety, and many more things. Our mind has all these needs, and if those needs aren't met, your mind will send your body specific emotions that will motivate you to take action in a specific way in order to fulfill those needs. So the point I'm trying to get at is this. The reason you go to the gym and the reason you want to build your body up is because a deep part of your mind understands that it will be able to fulfill one of its needs through building muscle. This can be your need for achievement, status, progress, maybe connection, love, and so on. And if your body keeps being motivated to go to the gym, it's because the gym is the only thing that is able to fulfill those needs. And if you're losing motivation on the other hand, it might be because you're fulfilling those needs you have through other sources like video games, social media, and so on. For example, video games can artificially fulfill your needs of achievement, status, progress, power, and connection. And if these needs are being fulfilled through video games, these motivators will essentially be satisfied, and you won't be as motivated to go to the gym because these needs have already been met. So the point here is that your subconscious mind will manipulate you into taking certain actions to fulfill deep psychological needs it has, and this applies to basically every single thing you do. Think about why you even clicked on this video. What was the thing motivating you to click on this and watch it? You have to ask yourself these questions because until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is a Carl Jung quote. Your body subconsciously clicked on this video because your mind understood that by consuming the information in this video, it would be able to achieve a goal you have, which, by the way, isn't really your goal, but a goal your subconscious mind has manipulated you to set at a faster rate, which would then fulfill a deep psychological need it has. Now, I don't blame you if you don't understand much of this because it's a lot of probably new information to process. I do have videos talking about this idea, so if this is something you want to learn more about, I've got videos on that. For now, all you need to remember is that one of the reasons you're lacking motivation to train or diet is because you're probably artificially fulfilling those needs you have through other things like video games, for example. And if you want to keep your motivation high, you want to completely cut out these other sources. Usually video games is the biggest one, but it could be something else depending on which needs you're trying to fulfill with the gym. So now a more practical point is that if you're not building the amount of muscle you wish to build, it's because you probably train like a bitch. If you look at the way most people train, it's no surprise why they're not making any progress. Many people have this idea in their minds that they're training hard and training to failure, but if you put a gun to their head, they could probably do 5 more reps. So the next time you're in the gym, try and do this. Try doing a set pretending you have a gun to your head and you have to keep doing reps until true failure. Now you only really want to do this for one set to see what actual true failure looks like, and if you haven't been training that hard, that one set might make you realize that you were training a lot less hard than you thought so. Now, if you're already training to complete failure and there's no difference between the before and after in terms of intensity, this is not for you, you're good. But for a lot of guys, you could train harder. Also, disclaimer, if you're just starting out in the gym, this doesn't apply to you. If you're just starting out, you don't want to train super hard, you want to go quite easy at first and then slowly build up over the months. So the third point I want to touch on is that you need to accept responsibility for failing. If you're not where you want to be in terms of your physique, it's your fault for not being there. A lot of people want to blame external things and have a victim approach for their lack of progress. They'll blame their genetics, an influencer, their financial situation, their parents, and anything external they can find, when in reality the only thing they should be blaming is themselves and their lack of will. You'll be able to find plenty of people who have built an unbelievable physique when they had supposedly bad genetics, no access to a gym, and not much money for food. You don't need to have fancy equipment to build a really good physique. You probably have good enough genetics to build a lot of muscle, but you haven't put in enough work yet. So the lesson here, I guess, is that you want to take full responsibility for your lack of progress. The reason you're not where you want to be isn't because of your genetics, because of your parents, because of your partner, or because the gym doesn't have the machines you want, but because of you and your lack of creativity for finding ways to still make progress regardless of your circumstances. So the fourth thing you need to understand is that in order for you to build muscle, you have to eat lots of food, specifically clean food. The science-based community will sometimes tell you that hitting your caloric and protein intake is all you need to build muscle, and it really doesn't matter where those calories and proteins come from. But this is something that I disagree with. I believe that the majority of your food, if not all of your food, should be clean. The reason behind this is because the idea of calories in, calories out applies to weight loss and weight gain, but it doesn't cause muscle growth on its own. It's also not only about protein. Protein is a very important aspect of muscle building, but it certainly isn't everything. It's about all the other nutrients and how those nutrients complement each other in food. Let me give you an example. If I give you a steak and a protein shake that both have the same amount of calories and protein, which do you think would build more muscle? You would say the steak, of course, because it has way more macronutrients, vitamins, and cholesterol, which, by the way, is also very important for muscle growth. You need all of these nutrients as well as protein and calories to build muscle optimally, and by having processed foods, you simply won't get those nutrients. All of these nutrients will also balance your hormones out and maximize your testosterone levels, which will directly and indirectly impact how much muscle you end up building. Another reason why food quality matters a lot is because of the inflammation processed foods will cause in your body. Healthy, real foods will cause little to no inflammation in your body, while processed foods will cause a lot of it, which will then impact muscle growth a lot. Any inflammation of the gut will affect the absorption of all the other foods you're having, so it's important that as your food goes up, you want to make sure the highest quality foods are coming into your body. So the whole point of this is eat clean, real foods, and a lot of them, and do not fall into the trap of using junk food to get your calories in. Now, in some cases, if you're very, very skinny and you struggle a lot with appetite, and the only way to get your calories in is through junk food, then in that case, you can use some junk food. But for all the other people, eat actual real foods. Now, if you're wondering what real foods are, I define them as foods that are closest to their natural form and have been through minimal processing. They're things like meat, fruit, eggs, rice, fish, and so on. They'll still be somewhat processed, but these things don't look like they're coming out of a factory. So a fifth lesson is that you want to make stuff really simple and straightforward. Something many people tend to do, especially as they're starting out, is making everything excessively complicated for no apparent reason. They're implementing so many details and additions that everything becomes very complicated and confusing. See, let's say you're training for the Mr. Olympia. Yeah, in that case, it makes sense to have a very complicated and detailed plan because every detail matters. But if you're just trying to build some muscle, it really doesn't take much effort or detail to get there. Even if you're in a phase of life where you're trying to maximize the amount of muscle you build, if you focus on the fundamentals, you train super hard on those, you eat a lot of clean food, and you sleep really well, that's all you really need to get like 97% of the results. So practically, I would do this. Have an idea of when you'll train, what you'll train, how many sets you'll do in total, and how many reps you'll do per set. Don't start thinking about negatives, breathing patterns, eccentric tempo, intensity techniques, and so on. Stick with the basics, that's all you need. Now, the sixth lesson is that your identity shapes your actions. One of the greatest reasons why people never get in shape, self-sabotage their progress, or end up going back to their old position in life is simply because deep inside they're still that version of themselves. Deep inside, they still see themselves as the skinny version of themselves, and there's a quite interesting study to show this. There's a common idea that 95% of diets fail, but most people don't understand where this idea comes from. A study was done on obese people who had lost weight to see how many of them would keep the weight off. After 1 year, 50 to 70% put the weight back on. After 2 years, 80 to 85% put the weight back on. And after 3 years, 95% of people put the weight back on. This idea that 95% of diets fail doesn't really come from the fact that the diet itself fails, but rather that the people who lose weight gain it back within the next 3 years. Now, there was a different study that looked at which factors allowed that 5% of people to keep the weight off, and the main reason was the fact that they were no longer who they used to be. No longer did they see themselves as fat. No longer were they the fat version of themselves. They had a complete identity shift and became a new person. This right here is the single greatest method to stay consistent in anything, but it's also the hardest. Now, you're not looking to lose fat or cut down, but the same principle still applies. People who build a lot of muscle and keep it because their identity and their sense of who they are has changed, whether they did this consciously or subconsciously. For most people, this process happens subconsciously, but you can do it consciously as well. If you want me to make a video on this, comment it down below because it's too deep of a subject to cover now. So understand that the internal dictates the external, so if deep inside you still view yourself as the skinny version of yourself, you will eventually go back to that state. As you gain weight, make sure you also shift your identity in the process. So the last lesson is that you need to find your drive vacuums. This is a bit of an extension of the first point, which is that you want to find the subconscious psychological drive that is causing your desire to build muscle in the first place, because if you can bring that unconscious reason to your awareness, you'll always be able to use that drive to motivate you to behave the way you're supposed to achieve your goals. So how exactly do you find that drive? The main way is to ask yourself which pain you're trying to avoid by the achievement of your goal. I'm not sure I clarified this in the first point, but essentially, when you set a goal, it is never about the goal itself, but about what the goal represents. What your mind and body cares about is what it thinks it will be able to get by achieving that goal. Let me give you an example. When I think about the main reason why I was able to stay so consistent with the gym for 5 years straight, the only thing that I could really come up with is because I knew that through building muscle, I would get more women or more attention from women. Like, that was my drive vacuum, getting more women. See, before I built my body up, I never really had much attention from women, and my mind and body saw this lack of women as painful. So when I set myself the goal to build X amount of muscle, the real goal behind was to get female attention. For most guys, this will be your drive vacuum, women. But it might be something else like not looking like a loser in front of your friends, making your parents proud, or anything else of that nature. And as I said, the good thing about finding this real reason is that you can always come back to this reason when you're feeling demotivated to train or eat your calories. So if you still don't know what it is, you can run your goal through an exercise called the 5 whys. Here's an example of what it looks like. What do you want to achieve? I want to get to 170 pounds at 12% body fat. Why? To be lean and muscular. Why do you want to be lean and muscular? To look better. Why do you want to look better? To get more attention from women. And why do you need more attention from women? Because I've never really had any and I feel deprived from it. This again is an example with girls being the motivation. But again, I do believe that's the primary motivation for guys getting into the gym. So run your goal through this exercise and try to define the primary reason why you're trying to gain more muscle, because again, you'll always be able to come back to this reason and use it to fuel your actions. So that's all I have for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful. Leave a like, comment if you want. Peace.